It's a great pleasure tonight to have the opportunity to introduce Gail Peacock to you, a fellow ordained minister at Fellowships of the Spirit. She is a resident of Bunker Hill, West Virginia. She earned a bachelor's degree in science from Bluefield State College and a master's degree in social work at West Virginia University. Gail worked many years for the Bureau of Children and Family Services. After initial retirement, she went back to work at Davis Medical Center with the Substance Abuse in Pregnancy program. She has been a spiritualist for most of her life. Gail attended Fellowships of the Spirit program and is an ordained minister of the program. She considers herself to be a lifelong learner and avid reader. Gail Peacock.
I knew I'd forget that. All right, thank you all. So the topic tonight is movement of spirit, and I'm going to just talk about how spirit has moved throughout my life and the journey that I've been on. So at birth, I only weighed a little over 3 pounds at a time when most babies did not survive that. Spirit made sure that I did and put me in a place where I would be where I needed to be for my journey. My biological mother was 17 years old at the time and not capable really of taking care of me, so my father took me to my grandparents who raised me. My journey with spirit really began at age 5 when I had my first experience. One of my chores at that time, and we all had chores because there was 13 of the kids and then 3 of us grandchildren. So we all had to do what we had to do. My job at that age was to go and watch over one of my great aunts who was not able to move. She was bedridden. I would fix her a sandwich, get her a drink, whatever was necessary at that time. So this one night when I went home, during the night, she visited me in my sleep. She appeared to me right beside of my bed, just as I would have seen her at any time. However, she was standing beside me, and she bent over. When I would leave every day, she would have me to bend over. She would touch my cheek and tell me to be a good girl. And this night is what she did. She bent over me, she touched my cheek, and she kissed my forehead, which she'd never done. And she said, "Always be a good girl and know that I love you." So I got up the next morning and I told my grandmother what had happened. She said, "She's fine." And I said, "No, she went to be with the angels. She's not in that bed anymore and I don't have to go do that chore." And she said, "No, honey, if that had happened, we would know." My uncle, who was only 4 years older than me, before he got on the school bus, we got the call that she had indeed passed into spirit. And so that's where my journey with spirit really began, and that's how it began moving inside me. Luckily for me, I knew my great-grandmother who helped me with this journey. She also did readings with people, only they didn't call it readings back then. They called it healing. That's what they called it. She was what one would know as an Appalachian granny, if any of you guys know what that is. She immigrated here from Ireland, and she always told me the stories about the fairies and the trolls and the brownies and the visitors and all of these things, and she helped me to follow that journey. She helped me to know that it was nothing to be afraid of, and I wasn't afraid. I guess I was just too young to know any better, and she helped me on that path. She lived until I was 10 years old. She gave me a lot of my foundation for what I do today. She gave me the courage to stand up and say these things that nobody really wanted to hear. because we were, at that time, Pentecostal. They don't, this is a big no-no for them. But I always remembered what my great-grandmother said, and that was that this can be healing, but it's also a big responsibility. And it's your responsibility to speak your truth. And your truth is what will make you happy in life. And I love her and I miss her still. I was 10, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that's been, but I miss her still. So a few years later, my dad and I were very close, and not many years later, I dreamed that he was going to pass. I dreamed it several times, and he did. I am so grateful that Spirit moved in a way that I knew that this was going to happen, because I was able to go and visit and have one last meeting with him and tell him one more time how much I loved him. And when I left, he said, it doesn't matter how old you are or where you are in life, you'll always be Daddy's girl. He had 6 girls, but we each won. That's what he would tell us. You'll always be Daddy's girl. And I still am. And years after that, he came to me in a dream again. And in this dream, I was traveling down Droop Mountain in West Virginia. It's the mountain state. They're like this. And not only are they like this, they're like this. Up and down hills and curves. So in this dream, my dad was a mechanic by trade. In this dream, he was instructing me on what to do if my brakes were to fail. He was instructing me to use not only the emergency brake, but also to gear down, because going downhill, that will slow you down also. I had this dream several times, to the point that I told my husband, I need to have these brakes checked. No, he said, you're fine. It passed inspection. It'll be fine. I kept dreaming it probably 5 or 6 times. So one afternoon, I had a class in Lewisburg, which was 45 miles away, on one of those roads that's like this. Going down that mountain, what happens? I put my foot down on that brake to slow down, and it goes like this, but then it just pops and goes all the way to the floor. So I remembered, just like that, what I had been told to do by my dad. I geared down first, and I pulled that emergency brake and somehow managed to get to the side of the road. And I thanked my dad. Because even though he's on the other side, his spirit was there, and he helped me to survive to raise my children. And then, just a while after that, this one's going to be hard, and I apologize ahead of time if I cry. I was pregnant again, and I birthed a son. And Elaine read this for me when I was here. I birthed a son who died. My grandmother, who did not approve of this, as I said, she was Pentecostal. She appeared at my bedside, and she held out her hands, and she took my son, and she said, "Don't worry, he will be well loved." And that was a gift from God, because that's how I managed to keep my sanity. And I'm very thankful that Spirit has moved throughout my life in all these ways. I'm very thankful that Spirit has been there in all the hard times as well as all the good times, continuing to move through my life. Now, I had never heard of Lilydale. I had never heard of spiritualism as a church until one day I was sitting in a beautician's chair having my hair cut. I was reading Edgar Cayce, There is a River. This lady, who I did not know, had just moved to town. She knew my husband and she knew his brother. And so I went to her. I thought, well, I'll just try her. It's a small town, you know, try them all. And she said, oh, you're reading Edgar Cayce. Are you a seeker? I'd never heard the term seeker. So she explained it to me, and she said, have you ever been to Lilydale? And I said, no, I've never heard of Lilydale. What's that? And she invited me to come with her. This was in 1988, the same year that my father passed. And so I came to Lilydale, and I took some classes. And I thought, you know, I think I can do some of this, because it was related to what I'd been doing all along. And there again, spirit, movement, the movement of spirit in my life, putting me where I needed to be, when I needed to be there, with people that I needed to be with, so that I could learn the things that I needed to learn. And I'm very grateful. So I've thought of several ways that I have felt the movement of spirit, and you guys can hopefully relate to some of these and maybe even add some of your own. The first one, and these are not in any particular order, the sound of a newborn baby's cry as it leaves the safety of its mother's body. The sound of crickets on a lazy summer afternoon. The song of a morning dove while sitting on a porch swing in the early evening dusk. The whisper of a warm breeze across your face. The laughter of children at play. The feel of silent tears as we watch someone we love suffer. The smell of fresh mown hay or the scent of lilacs in spring. And that reminds me of my grandfather and my grandmother. The peaceful, panoramic scene of a white snow-covered field shining in the morning sun. The warmth of a genuine hug from a friend. Holding the hand of a loved one as they pass into spirit. And I would like to leave you this evening with something to think about. When you think there's no movement of spirit, it is still moving. What it's doing is actually healing you and integrating into you a life experience lesson or getting you ready for another growth phase. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.